interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
I'm back.
Anywhere you meet me, guaranteed to go down.
I like the way you ride with that booty on me.
It's going down.
Go down while you looking lonely.
It's going down.
Come around and it's all on me.
Anywhere you meet me, guaranteed to go down.
So, new year, new intro. Let's get it. I'm not so sure if I'm going to promise to be a brand new me this year, but my reactions are going to be a lot differently. I'm not going to be doing the most. I'm not going to be doing above and beyond, and I'm going to stay in my lane. That is how 2026 is going to be from here out. Either roll with me or I'm going to roll over you or around you. Whichever is easier.
Okay, she headed to the dance floor and she slowly started popping it. Song like my wrist beats, everybody got to watching it. Girl, you got that secret treasure, I'm gon' put a lock on it. Don't care what they say, I was stupid to be not on it.
Watch me flex. So I am still on my journey, natural anti-inflammatory, and it's going well. I actually left my house, which I very seldom do for those that know me. Went to Tradarius Jose, otherwise known as operating as Trader Joe's, looking specifically for red fleshed apples. No one in the state of Tennessee is selling these type of apples out loud. So I think I'm going to have to do some research online and get them shipped to me because they are the bomb. So I think I've spoken of the health benefits of red fleshed apples, but I know I've probably missed the peak harvest time and being able to access these apples outside of growing them myself, which I will not do because I have a tendency to kill trees. That's my lemon trees. But we're going to see this year. So the list of available red fleshed apples: Pink Pearl, Pink Sparkle, the Lucy Glow, Thornberry, Geneva Crab, Giant Russian, Winter Red Flesh, Almada, and the Mountain Rose are red because of the high levels of anthocyanins, which are known to improve endothelial function, the vessels of your cells. If you have high blood pressure or hypercholesterolemia, this substance acts as a protective. There's a reduction in inflammation and it modulates your immune system. So these apples themselves, not only are they genuinely beautiful apples, they actually are even sweeter and they also have much health benefits. So I went on a search and seizure mission to access these apples. Lucy Glow apples are not even available anymore, or not available consistently. And again, their peak time was like November, mid-December-ish. So you're not going to find them consistently here in Tennessee, but also, especially this time of year, if you do get your hands on some, they're not going to be at the peak sweetness or internally red. So the health benefits, although the health benefits are not any less with which are markedly less with white fleshed apples, the red apples or the apples of color are just more cardioprotective. So I did get the Envy apples, juice them up, mix them with my celery and cucumbers, added a pinch of cracked black pepper and pink salt with a little bit of basil and lime juice for preservation of that green color. And that juice combination was off the chain, and I'm grateful that I actually got the opportunity to make that, and it was very good. Also, I've been growing my own vegetables. I am very fortunate and very blessed to be able to have a garden that I purchased inside, and I was able to harvest 2 servings of bok choy, which I put in the air fryer. And this is just another way I found it accidentally, looking for different ways to prepare it, and just adding just maybe 3 or 4 ingredients, a little bit of garlic, salt, pepper, and olive oil. And you can actually create crispy bok choy. You got to make sure that you heat it low temperature and keep an eye on it so you won't burn up your leaves. And it actually makes a very good chip. And I'm actually excited about potentially making, because looks like I'm producing a lot of kale, and I'm going to produce my kale chips and just see how that rolls. So there's so much. And then adding that, making a proper bowl, adding that as a side for stir-fried chicken cubes. This is the oven roasted chicken from Tyson. Mixing that up with a little bit of truffle oil, black truffle oil, regular mushrooms, shallots, and then probably not adding as much fish sauce as I did. The meal that I just actually had is energy, and I had some just Pellegrino with some lime, and that's what gave me, more so than a cup of coffee, gave me the energy to be able to get the energy to, produce this podcast. I'm determined. It's later in the day, but I'm determined to produce all segments of it. And that is the type of meal that is a part of my whole anti-inflammatory protocol. And I'm hopeful that I'll be able to eat more things like that. As I said in an earlier episode, taking that recipe, creating stir fry with seafood, and you don't have to add a whole bunch of stuff. Be careful on how much actual salt or actual fish sauce that you add, because the saline content will actually increase the taste without increasing your sodium intake and your blood pressure. A lot of this stuff is intuitive and actually tastes good. If you're going to grow your own food, you need to come up with inventive ways to actually create it. And that's the word right there.
Slow down the morning, speed up the soul. A world of flavor delivered whole. FB Roasters, your perfect cup, just a click away. Online, on time, oh so bold. Slow down the morning, speed up the soul. A world of flavor delivered whole. FB Roasters, your perfect cup, just a click away. A world of flavor delivered whole. FB Roasters, your perfect cup, just a click away. click away. FB Roasters, your perfect cup, just a click away.
Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high. So take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow. I can go anywhere. Ways to know and ways to grow, a temporal rainbow. I can be anything. So take a look, it's in a book, a tenfold rainbow. A tenfold rainbow. A tenfold rainbow. For those that have either newcomers or have started following me on social media, you've noticed that my whole outlook has changed since I've become a forward travel consultant, as well as I started my FB Roasters business. For this month of March, as into the rest of the year, I plan on celebrating the Star Trek 60th anniversary of the premiere of the original series. All of my social media platforms are going to be directed to that. I plan on restarting my whole nerdy track, highlighting some of the reels I've created for YouTube as well as for Instagram. And also, I plan on a 2-week trek out to Sedona, which I'll start highlighting on that channel as well as sharing with the listeners. However, I'm excited to talk about this week's focus on Osceola's Revenge by Gary Green and how I paired it with the 5 rules of acquisition, because the first part of my trek out to Sedona has me stopping to not only the casinos out west of Memphis, but also many of the Indian casinos that dot my trek or path along I-40 all the way into Arizona. And this book, I found, it's very intriguing, but at the same time, I find it very disturbing, because the whole story, the whole premise behind the book is in itself very disturbing, but I believe the Ferengis would actually understand it. And this is hilarious because I finally have my hand on the book of the Rules of Acquisition by Quark, as told by our Ira Beer, who actually played Quark the entirety of the run on Deep Space Nine, which is one of my favorite platforms of Star Trek series, especially the movies, especially the series, TV series portion of it. And I just realized I don't recall any of the movies having a Deep Space Nine slant. Yeah, that was one of the platforms I did not have. It was very popular. I liked it probably even more than Voyager, definitely more than Enterprise, but I digress. So let's take a look at the whole premise of the book, Osceola's Revenge, and applications to the rules of acquisition. First, the first rule of acquisition is once you have their money, never give it back. In the opening chapters of the Osceola's Revenge, there is a focus on the permanence of loss, whether it is land, legacy, or capital. the characters move through and against the status quo operate on a principle that once power and resources are seized through legal or systemic loopholes, the old guard has no path for recovery. And this is also one of the things that I needed to, because I use generative AI in order to come up with what I'm going to help me to craft what I'm going to speak about in my podcast. When I basically wrote the prompt for AI to combine the rules of acquisition, they made reference to Max Osceola of the Seminole Indians, the great-great-grandson of the great chief of the Seminole Indians. They compared him to the Indian Trump. I basically say make no reference to Trump or any MAGA supporters. But when I finally read the back of the book, he was called that. And Trump actually had a lobbyist because he said the sovereignty of the Indian nations was unfair to his ability to basically run every gambling enterprise he actually had to the ground. I found that to be hilarious. But I digress and I'll get back to that. The second rule of acquisition, greed is eternal. The book focuses on the idea why political movements and social structures are fleeting. The underlying human desire for more influence, retribution, or control is the constant engine of that plot. The revenge in the title is as much a reclaiming perceived lost value as it is about justice. There's Rule 34, war is good for business. Osceola's revenge highlights how instability creates a vacuum that the bold can exploit. Conflict isn't just a byproduct of the plot. It's the catalyst that allows the protagonist and antagonist to bypass traditional bureaucracy and fast-track their own agendas. There's Rule 76. Every once in a while, declare peace and confuse the hell out of your enemies. There is a recurring theme of subterfuge. The narrative often shows players using the language of reconciliation or returning to tradition as a tactical smokescreen. By appearing to seek peaceful resolution, they mask the aggressive maneuvers happening behind the scenes. And then Rule 239, never be afraid to mislabel a product. The marketing movement within the book, the motivations are often wrapped in high-minded rhetoric about heritage and sovereignty, but the underlying mechanics are frequently shown to be more cynical. It's about selling a revolution that is, at its core, a hostile takeover. And you ain't never lied. From $147 tax bill and threat of repossession and tax sale for a single wide trailer on the land in Minnesota to allowing a $200 billion business to slip through the hands of the same people that maneuvered to discredit, extinguish the Native American or First Nation, because they said if they identified as a Native American, that means they weren't a man. What kind of crazy racial bullshit is that? You talk about revenge on the nth degree. When Max Osceola and all the shamans stopped dancing, we're talking about $100 billion cash deal for Harris, signed by the same Seminole Indians, which were not only one of the only tribes that never signed a treaty with the United States government, that were the poorest until they became one of the richest and sole heirs to that, free education, health care for the duration. We're talking about going from almost extinction to billionaires within not even a full generation. These were the same people that told Andrew Jackson to kick rocks and get the hell off their land in Florida, only to be poverty-stricken for about 150 years before they basically won the right to really became recognized as First Nation, sovereign, only governed by themselves. It's wild. The irreversibility of Rule 1. There were injunctions and property filings to create a new normal for people that did not even have the word for tax in their own native language, to creating a new normal that allowed them the sovereignty and the majesty that their community deserved after being lied to for decades, for centuries. There are vested rights. The idea that once a right is granted or a deed is filed, the state can't easily come and claw it back and lie about it and keep the money or the land forever. You can't do that. There's Rule 10, where the legal strategies rely on the fact that the institutions are wary and underfunded. By filing endless motions and utilizing lawfare, this is the whole premises of Osceola's revenge. The legislative process, or the white people, bet on the fact that their opponents' resources are finite, while the drive for revenge is an inexhaustible fuel source. Basically, the same mechanisms that the white man has used for centuries to keep the native First Nation down, they're basically now flipping the script and using their own bureaucracy against the white person. There's a Trojan horse. This is Rule 76. This is seen when characters offer a settlement or a compromise that appears to give the opposition a minor victory. In reality, the concessions often hide clauses that strip the opposition of their standing to suit in the future. You have to be careful when you declare a truce and in the form of some decree that actually codifies the character's long-term control over disputed assets. And there's also a mislabeling when a private commercial interest, there is a difference between sovereign act and a traditional heritage claim. You gain access to different sets of laws, like tribal or even maritime law, that favor their position. And there you talk about some really squirrely maneuvers. All of this plays out in the courtroom when you talk about lawsuits, because the judge is forced to apply a different and more favorable legal standard. And what is the difference between this, and why I was so mad when the first thing they brought up was Max Osceola being the Indian Donald Trump. Donald Trump did not have the same skills as Max Osceola. Steve Wynn is the other one, because those two characters fought hard for getting access to the casinos. They basically tried some old school shenanigans. Trump tried to offer them his services or consultancy fees, but then they basically fired him as a consultant because they said the fees were too high and he wasn't given, there was not any values. They did not accept his beads for Manhattan. And then Wynn basically tried to get lobbyists to keep them from actually having their casinos, even though collectively those casinos made more even than U.S. Steel and employed even more people. Max Osceola in the book was portrayed as a visionary tribal entrepreneur. His style was grounded in sovereign rights, but unlike any private developer, his power comes from his status as a leader of a nation, a full sovereign nation. His quips and one-liners, like buying Manhattan one hamburger at a time, because that's when they bought the Hard Rock, It is a deeply strategic mind focus on a collective advancement of his tribe. Chump, on the other hand, had a branding first approach. His strategy in Atlantic City was about the spectacle and the name. And then Osceola used the Hard Rock brand as a vehicle for the tribal permanence rather than personal ego. Trump was had plastered his name at all costs, never paid bills, never cared about the legacy and perpetuity. He was only cared about the right now and about going viral for all the wrong reasons. Steve Wynn was the perfectionist. His strategy was rooted in luxury and environmental control, while Osceola was focused on political and legal architecture of gaming. Wynn focused on the aesthetic and the psychological architecture. Osceola's revenge is the ultimate leverage. He uses his unique legal status of the Native American tribes to outmaneuver state regulators, and his deals were about jurisdiction. He basically told every state to kick rocks. Texas, Oklahoma, all of them. Get out of his face with that bullshit. Chump's deals in the gaming world were often about high leverage growth. He moved fast, used debt and personal celebrity to force concessions from competitors and cities. When wanted to redefine the market, didn't just want a casino. He wanted to change what a casino meant. The bottom line is Chump name has been removed from every casino he once actually held, and because all of them basically ended in bankruptcy, lots of layoffs, and now Atlantic City is a ghost of what it was. Every property he even owned in Manhattan, they took the Chump name off the building, and you can't even say his name in that city because that's where they prosecuted him and won 32 counts of fraud successfully. Wynn is known as an afterthought and does not run the name of the resort and conglomerate that still holds his name. But Osceola, on the other hand, Harris and Hard Rock, synonymous with legacy and growth, and that's what he meant by buying back Manhattan. Manhattan was bought from the Indians for a handful of worthless beads. He's buying it back one hamburger at a time, cash, and it's coming with interest. That's some gangster shit right there. And I'm not even finished reading this book because that, as well as the rules of acquisition, I'm going to be touching on as I plan and get and prepare for my trek to Sedona in April. Yeah, there's just a whole bunch of unholy amount of information, ungodly information that's coming out on the reality TV world. And what better yet of using the instrumental of unholy as I record on this glorious Sunday morning. Hamnet was one of the movies that I had not watched because I am anti going to the movies at this time. I just realized that I was AMC insider for a while because I owned several shares of the AMC stock. It tanked a while ago, and I got tired of it dragging down my portfolio, so I got rid of it. But Hamnet, it looked interesting, but I didn't know, or initially I had it playing in the background on Friday, and I was like, I knew Hamnet was what probably was a take on Shakespeare's Hamlet, but I did not know that the script was based on a book by Maggie Farrell, who basically focused on the tragic death of William Shakespeare's son and brought the ethereal likeness of his wife Agnes, or Anne Hathaway, to the forefront. The premise of the book, it was set in 1580s and 90s in Stratford upon Avon. In this version, Agnes, who is the fictionalized version of Anne Hathaway, she's portrayed as a fierce, ethereal woman with a gift for verbal healing and a touch of the supernatural. The plot follows her unconventional marriage to a young tutor who becomes the great playwright as he builds his career in the London theater scene. The tragedy is, in the summer of 1596, the arrival of the bubonic plague, and this is said in how one flea basically changes the trajectory of a family. It appears Agnes had been against moving the family in its entirety to London for a variety of reasons. Even though Shakespeare's mama hated her, she basically goes through a very tumultuous birth of the twins, the boy Hamnet, and which is used interchangeably during that time of Hamlet, and the sister. The sister actually is born basically dead. There's no CPR or NPR at that time, where they were trying to blow in her face and they were rubbing her, and the mother had basically held her and said she was going to bury her. And then she basically took her first deep breath and she started breathing. She basically pulled her back over to this side. And then the bubonic plague hits, and then how he basically said he wanted Hamnet, the little 11-year-old, says he wanted to trade places with his sister because his sister was also sick. And the mother uses everything, and he basically dies, has a high fever, is having seizures, probably had meningitis, and he passes away. And it looked like a very painful death. Judith is the twin. She survives, but he becomes like the sacrificial lamb. The final act of the book and the final several acts of the play basically explores the profound grief of a family and how the loss is transmuted into art. And also that the play Hamlet, To Be or Not to Be Hamlet, was born out of Shakespeare's attempt to process his son's death and save him through the immortality of the stage, because the dude was only 11 years old. It basically shifts away from the great bard or Shakespeare to the woman and the children he left behind. He's only referred to until like the NC, this is Shakespeare, as that, the bard, the tutor, him, the husband, and if the Agnes and Judith and Hamnet, we're focused on them. Other historical art novels that basically play on this, where the women of these great men are brought to the forefront. The Paris Wife by Paula McLean. This follows Ernest Hemingway's wife. I actually did read that. Z, a novel of Zelda. This is by Teresa Ann Fowler. And she went from just being F. Scott Fitzgerald's crazy muse to a talented artist in her own right. And unfortunately, she probably had to stifle her own stardom because we didn't learn of her art until she was already locked away in a sanitarium. Then Mrs. Dickens. This is a look at Charles Dickens' wife, who bore him 10 children to be only cruelly cast aside as his fame grew. There's the other Einstein. I think I actually did read that, by Marie Benedict. It's an account of Albert Einstein's first wife, who herself was a brilliant physicist, and she was more likely the author of the Miracle Papers instead of dyslexic Einstein. And then another book by her, The Personal Librarian, is the true story of Belle DaCosta Green, the personal librarian of J.P. Morgan. Oh, I need to read that because she had to hide her Black heritage to navigate the elite world of art and power. Wow. I wonder if I can actually find that and put that in the Far From Beale Street, because that's a dope book right there. And then there's The Engineer's Wife by Tracy Emerson Wood, who follows Emily Roebling, the woman who effectively took over the construction of the Brooklyn Bridge. That I vaguely remember from The Gilded Age. A lot of myth, a lot of legend, but a lot of this is also based in fact. There are many other books. The Sound of Achilles, The Silence of the Girls, and Hester. The reimagining of the woman who inspired Hester Prynne in The Scarlet Letter, exploring her relationship with the young Nathaniel Hawthorne. And then Lucretia de Medici. No, this is the Borgia. No, that's a different one. That's actually probably more of what we're talking about. And then All of Our Yesterdays by Joel Morris is a prequel to Macbeth, focusing on the life and trauma of Lady Macbeth before the events of the play. These are so many, but just a tip of the iceberg of women like Agnes Shakespeare, and a whole other subdrama of historical fiction dedicated to reclaiming the stories of women who lived in the shadows of famous men. And I hope you will take this and also add some of these books to your reading list as you explore this and many other books as far as your reading goes. And thank you for listening. If you want a breakdown of the most recent episode of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, my suggestion to you would be tune in to the recap by Carlos King and Alexis Bellino. I think he usually publishes that on Saturday, although I didn't see an updated version this past Saturday, so I'm not sure what's going on. I think it's fantastic that when he does it, their take on things is a little bit different than mine. And I'm starting to lose interest in that franchise. Also, this past week's recap of The Real Housewives of Potomac, Monday Night Live almost went up in flames as Dustin Ross had to gather Claudia C. Murder Jordan about her comment on just the trailer of Real Housewives of Atlanta. The giving of it all, the love and hip hop of it all, that was funny to me. And I'm right. I don't think I'm in the right frame of mind to even focus in on that, because I think, again, Monday Night Lives actually would probably do a better job of that than I could ever do of breaking that down. And they're funny. And I don't have anybody to actually bounce stuff off, to go back and forth of it all. So I'm going to suggest that you navigate there and then watch that this upcoming Monday. Real Housewives of Potomac actually wrapped the reunion wrap. Carlos, Judge Tyranny, and that other girl who now is in law school, they even did a criminal intent kind of revamp of what's going on in the Osceola trial and the split of it all. So, but unless something untoward comes up, I'm probably not going to recap any of that, because I'm going to use this time to basically focus in on the Bells, as well as because now they picked up cameras again for Love and Marriage, Huntsville. Now, the Bells of Jackson, Mississippi, this is a show that actually has been on for a while. It's been on for 6-7 seasons. I always say, Letitia always looks like she said, And now I'm thinking about, I became a PI back in 2024. She has now started, she's a very a Bell's bondsman. She's been a Bell's bondsman for over a decade. She's been getting the money. Her and that beautiful woman who basically is getting her life back. They've been a Bell's bondsman since like 2012, 2013. And the Glenn of it all, I could not understand all of the ins and outs, because number one, having her screech and that other lady that's the radio personality, it takes a lot to get on my nerves. But I just couldn't understand the dynamics of that. What I do understand is Letitia is tired of Glenn's shenanigans. She wants to be able to exist and feel safe in a relationship with or without him, because she now does not, and she's always been a go-getter. She's always been after. What is it going to take for stability for herself and for her kid? And she's not going at the mercy of the whims of her husband. I didn't realize until she said it on the show, she did not have her own bank account until recently. Her mama was looking at her like she was crazy, because they went to paint porcelain, which what I thought was dope. And mama painted a really neat plate and said, when you feel that you have enough, that's when you break this plate. It has nothing to do with Glendale. It has nothing to do with anything outside of her. She is honest, and she's like, she doesn't want Glenn to be a part of her professional life, because all he's going to do is come in there and try to rule over stuff and try to make it all about him. He's just like so backwards and such a toxic example of what you want. He does have great some qualities, but some of that that ninja qualities I can't flow with. He knew that she was go get it from one. It was fine when he was in control of everything because that's what he actually wants. But she doesn't want to be subject and be at the mercy of the whims of what he does, because she's also seeing this is what it feels like to be independent and not dependent on somebody that's going to get all up in their feelings and their butt on their back when things don't go their way, because they always don't make the good decisions. And she's not going to need to be there to try to hold it together and hold down and pick up the pieces. Why suffer when you don't have to suffer? This being on the struggle bus and lean years and she says, I'm too old for that. Her son is getting older in age, and the bounce back is harder as we go on in this life. She's not being subjective to being happy homemaker when the economic details of today don't allow for that nonsense. And don't allow for a man that's still on the hustle and trying to do things and cut corners like he did back in the day. That doesn't make sense in 2026. And she's tired of being at the mercy of the whims of white people and of a jackass black man that actually has low self-esteem, even though he want to boss up and get in his truck and then roll away. Because now she knows she's going to be okay. What I do know is that her and Latrice, either they need to squash it or they're going to need to come and figure out some way, because no, they are going to need to be able to film with each other, because both of them are basically messing up the bag of everyone. And they're going to need to figure that shit out. They both are the face of the show. And what would it benefit if Letitia actually talking to some disgruntled people? What would it benefit her? That it doesn't make any sense. And I kind of feel that the Josh and whoever of it all, they just want to be relevant, and they're truly mad that they're not. So they're going to pit them against each other, because when you divide, you conquer. And they just want to be messy and mess up everybody's bag because they did not secure their place on a show that they really didn't have anything to do with. They wanted more than what the show actually could offer for them. And since they didn't have a role, they want to blow up everybody's spot. And that's where they're going to get got. But if Latrice actually calms the fuck down and she listens, because look at who is telling you this. Somebody that you fired and that you can't, that basically wanted to secure his place or her place in your life, but your husband wasn't having it. So now you're trying to get back at her at the expense of somebody else. That's what it seems is giving to me. And I'm using this. I hope I'm using it correctly, just Dustin Ross, because it seems to me that the only benefit would be somebody that was actually terminated and can't film because you mad at her. So you're trying to get back at her by using one of her good friends. Why would she do that? There's no benefit from either one of y'all. And y'all both messing up everybody's bag because you can't see it that way. You need to sit down and look at this and I think hopefully we're going to see this, because Letitia and Latrice actually meet up without the carry of it all at a restaurant. And I hope they are calm enough to hear what the other person is saying and then realize that the people that are bringing these allegations are messy, and they will use by any means necessary to blow up everything just because they felt that they were slighted. That's a dangerous person to deal with. Now on to Love and Marriage, Huntsville. I couldn't understand why they kept breaking and they took pauses, because there is a lot going on in Huntsville that if the production played their cards right, and it seems that they have, that there are so many more rich stories than watching Letitia Scott and Marceau and his marblehead fuckboy say some of the stupidest shit. It basically premiered again, episode 17, and all I could think of, we heard Nell screech for all of these previous episodes when we actually had the culmination of what is going on now. I'm actually getting excited about seeing. We're watching the evolution of Maurice. We're watching him get to the point and looking like he actually did the work and saying what Kimmy needs to hear. We are also watching Chris Fletcher's, I don't know if it's a downfall, but it's an interesting dynamic. Why, now that they picked up the cameras, is basically the main focus is going to be Chris Fletcher's revocation of his real estate license. And it's more, he said he was suspended. I think that's putting it lightly. They basically took his shit back. I did not know that Chris Fletcher actually was a well-respected real estate broker agent in the Huntsville area. He also had a state job that basically dealt with the regulations of real estate. It seems like while he was on the job for the state, he was conducting a bunch of personal business using the telephone, fax, scanners, and even had his own boss proofread a contract that it looks like he made copies on, it's so stupid, on the state's agency's copier. It's crazy. Of course, Marceau is going to say, I told you so. Martell's going to say, I told you so. Letitia Scott is just going to continue to overreact because she hasn't forgiven Nell or him about promoting her own husband's infidelity. But again, I don't care, because unless you got the true receipts, you overreacting or something that actually happened over a decade ago, I don't care. He did it. He ain't saying yay or nay, and now you still reacting like this in 2026. Again, don't care. Kimmy Scott is more observational than taking a really firm stance. She's like, dude, what? This ain't on the up and up, and you need to be ashamed of himself. And it's more or less about the license itself. It's more about the hypocrisy, about judging other people's marriages when their own professional house is in a disorder. She's taking umbrage of that. And she needs to basically let that shit go. And basically, how can you continue to go on? And if it ain't true, it ain't true. Her lipstick on a pig husband, focus on that instead of this nonsense. Instead of this. Martell Holt, NDA allegation, talking about putting somebody on lock. Girl, shut up, Martell, and take your milk dud head back with your side piece of a girlfriend and keep it pushing. And nobody's going to let her be on this show. You trying to self-produce her and your illegitimate children with this hoe. Nobody cares. Again, nobody cares. But the allegations against Chris Fletcher are pretty serious. as I stated, he was conducting private business on state time. He using the Department of Economic and Community Affairs to basically manage and promote his own business. He uses the state resources, computers, scanners, network, to process 50 documents related to his own personal business. Dishonest dealings is kind of like a catch-all phrase where they basically says that he was working for himself by being paid by taxpayer, basically double dipping. The state is paying you, people through their taxes are paying you, but you basically brokering $1 million business ventures on our dime. We paying for all those resources, but we're not sharing in that. Big conflicts of interest. He basically is in that state position, which he used to potentially influence some deals. And this is an ethical breach. He basically did not report and document properly about these deals to all regulatory bodies. And then this unprofessional conduct is a general finding that his behavior brought disrepute to the profession, especially given his public profile. See, they're basically going through when he was supposedly on the clock. They heard him conduct these businesses. They got all the network timestamps. They got the receipts. And now seeing that even though he probably did invest somewhat in his other businesses, including Miss Nail's babysitting business or her daycare, childcare business. Now he is going to have to lean in on the revenue from that business to support their lifestyle. And Nail is kind of mad about that. She basically said, I didn't do this stupid shit. Why now I have to give a part of my revenue to that? That's going to be interesting to see how they navigate that, because she seems stingy, even though I'm sure he did use some of his time and also their financial resources to support that business. Because even though it can be kind of lucrative, that also is a heavily regulated business. And I'm sure it's not pulling in the same revenue as when you close on a property, the 3 to 6% that he can get from a lot of those dealings. It probably doesn't match the same as what Nail gets from the sometime weekly, most of the time weekly payment of those child care fees. I get it, but y'all married and I don't know if there's a prenup, so come up off the coins, girl. Basically, the evidence against him is pretty hard-hitting. Witnesses, there's a digital paper trail, and there's also, he reportedly asked his supervisor to proofread a real estate document that would be one of the things that would be held against him. He's basically like, I'm your supervisor. You actually had me proofread a document that was created using my department's resources, but I ain't gonna share in this. Boy, bye. And got. That's like some of the stupidest shit I've ever heard of in my life. And he basically opened up while he is fighting the revocation of his license. A lot of it's ongoing. He's not going to be able to talk about a lot of it. But if you're not going to be able to talk about a lot of it, having Marceau say nah, nanny boo boo, or Martell say the same thing, and Miss Nell freak out, and you can't give me this kind of detail. You can only comment what is already public. You can comment on what is already publicly known. But all that other messy shenanigans, I don't need to hear any of that. And if you can't even comment on what has already been released in the press or is public knowledge, I'm not going to be able to listen to it. Also, the destiny of it all. You mean to tell me, instead of us seeing and watching for 16 episodes, Letitia Scott overreact about something that happened over a decade ago with the shenanigans of her husband, instead of learning more about how Destiny was removed from the care of her biological mother, adopted out, and that's how she came to Mississippi. And then she has been working to find her other half siblings that were immediately placed in foster care, subsequently adopted, and she just now, 27 years later, is finding them. All 6 of them children don't even want to meet the biological mother that the state had to take them away from. Y'all mean to tell me y'all were letting us watch the Letitia Scott and the nail shenanigans of it all? And I still don't understand why Letitia Scott is reacting so violently to Destiny. I'm missing something when the storyline is really with Destiny. This is what I want to see. I don't want to see her dumb ass, Parkinson looking ass, shake her head ass, overreact about some nonsense that Marceau Scott did with Martell Holt in 2016. I don't care. This is what I want to see. Again, if you don't have any actual receipts, please have a seat. Get out of my face and go somewhere else. Close the deal. Finish the project. Let me learn more about Destiny and her trials and to how she went from that to being a beautiful, successful businesswoman that she is. That's what I want to see. I don't care about that messy mess with Marceau Scott. I don't care. You can take the girl out of the hood, but you can't take hood music out the girl. But I'm going to end this with a word, just as I started this podcast. Do or do not do. There is no try. And that's a word from Yoda. I hope I have conveyed just how much fun I have had in creating this podcast. I've got my mojo back. Just set your intention or reset your intention. It could be daily if necessary. Mine is peace. No mental dumping over here. If I'm acting like I'm not listening, I'm probably not. I'm not your therapist. I'm not a therapist. Keep the crazy to yourself, child. You do you and leave me be. The sooner you figure that ish out, the happier you will be. So this is what I want to convey in this podcast. And that wraps another of FAFFO has a fro. Join me next time as I throw shade and point out the shade and simply have fun. Y'all have a great new year. What, y'all? What?